Welcome. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Griffin, the Executive Director of the New York City Hemophilia Chapter. We are coming to you today because this is our first in our series of our financial literacy series. Living with a bleeding disorder is especially tough, especially in financial times that are uncertain. It can be overwhelming. And we found that many people in our community may find themselves struggling with a range of financial burdens. So part of our way of addressing this was to put together this kind of series that will allow us to start a dialogue with experts on what can we be doing as individuals and as a community to put ourselves in better positions. This series is going to address a couple of different things. We're looking to you guys to ask questions and share with us what you're looking for. But one of the things that you'll find is we will be bringing you information about defining your goals, setting priorities, saving for college and medical expenses, managing credit and debt, protection against fraud, saving for retirement, and much, much more. Today's episode is especially exciting because today we're talking about getting back into the workforce, both during a pandemic and beyond any of these troubling times. We're very lucky to have a special guest today, Dr. Donald Asher. He's here to talk to us about the subject and do some quick question and answer with our community afterwards. So we're thrilled by that. Before we get started, I do want to thank our sponsors who have made this series possible. A big thank you to our platinum sponsor, Pfizer, our gold sponsor, Takeda, our bronze sponsor, Genentech, and also don't forget down below, we've put some links that if you want some additional resources, this will be a great place for you to download and use these resources later. So before we get started, our guest today, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Donald Asher. He's an internationally recognized speaker and author on the subject of workplace and getting jobs. He's written books including Who Gets Promoted, Cracking the Hidden Job Market, and The Overnight Resume. Very welcome to have him here. Put your hands together and thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Donald.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate all that. So I'm going to start a slide show that I'll talk over. So just give me a second here. Here we go. All right. So, all right, Jeremy, can you see the slide? Does that look right?
I can, yes.
All right, we're in business. Welcome, everybody. So this should be a product of enduring interest to the community. So if you know of other people that need to see this that are in the community, please alert them to this. This asset provided by the Hemophilia Chapter in New York City. As the pandemic ends, it's a unique time to return to work. So we're going to talk today about selling your pandemic experiences to an employer. What's your story and how does that fit into your employability? Finding hidden jobs before they're announced, remote work, hybrid work, and back to the office programming, and how to design your own onboarding program, because that often is the stumbling block between getting hired and not getting hired. It's the ability to show an employer that you can hit the ground running. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about. Again, I'm Dr. Don Asher, and our host and MC is Jeremy Griffin, Executive Director of the New York City Hemophilia Chapter. So, so back to work. It is a great time. I would say the best time in my career for somebody to enter or re-enter the job market. It's a uniquely kind and benevolent job market. For the first time in a long time, job gaps don't matter. Skills gaps can be bridged. And so I think that whatever your limitations might be, and maybe there are none, but if you have limitations, we could fix them in this job market. So whatever your starting point might be, maybe you are employed but want a better job. Maybe you've been out of the job market a while because of the pandemic, or possibly challenges with illness. Or maybe you're just getting out of school, whether it's high school or college or grad school, if you're just getting out of school. So it doesn't matter what your starting point is. This is a good time to go at things. So the pandemic has been and become the great equalizer. The employee shortage is real. There's 10 job openings for every 6 job seekers. Employers are becoming reasonable. I guess I'd put it that way. They're less picky, more likely to offer training, and more likely to bend their criteria, and more likely to take someone they would have passed over even recently. It's a great time if you have any kind of blemish on your background to hit the job market. So let's start with your pandemic story. You did not spend the last 2 years in the basement getting really good at Fortnite. That story won't fly, okay? So let's take a look at ways of packaging your pandemic story. So you became the teacher for your kids stuck in remote schooling. You use LinkedIn Learning to gain tech skills. Obviously, this has to be true. I'm not encouraging anybody to say something that's not true, but I'm asking you to dig for your story. You taught yourself Spanish on Babbel. You taught yourself to play Gothic tunes on the organ, maybe with Gothic makeup as well. I don't know. You remodeled your spare room. And so you got to come up with something that is your pandemic story. So I'll let you start to cogitate on that, and we'll come back to it in a little bit about that. But here's a quote from CEO. Companies will look at what you did during this time period. How did you better yourself? How did you take advantage of this situation? So it's a standard recruiting and interviewing question. You need to develop your story so that you're ready for it. But what about resumes? Big good news on resumes is that gaps don't matter. You don't have to worry about that right now. And you write each resume for a specific job. That's very important. So you're not going to have one resume for this job search. You're going to have dozens upon dozens. You're going to change your resume as much as every single time you use it. So get used to that idea. If you haven't worked in a while, there's some easy solutions. Let's take a look at a handful. I think I have 4. You really can just put an open hyphen, even if you left 2 years ago. So maybe you left in 2000, but you worked for a group called Smith & Watkins. You can say Smith & Watkins 2017 dash, and don't put an ending date. That's absolutely fine to do, and you don't have to then call attention to the fact you've not worked in 2 years. But right now, oddly, or interestingly or differently, you can actually just not explain what happened over the last 2 years. So you can say Smith & Watkins 2017 to 2000. That's 2020. That's an interesting typo right there, Jeremy. 2020. That's a long time to be unemployed. You could just leave it open. You can put the time, but not explain what you've been doing over the pandemic. Employers are used to this. I don't love this one as much as I love the prior one. And maybe you worked at Smith & Watkins from 2017 to 2020, and you just write 3 years, and you don't say how long ago that was. So those are 3 ways to do it. You can also explain what you've been doing during the pandemic if you want. Now, this is an option. You don't have to do it. I spent the pandemic taking care of urgent personal and family matters, currently ready to return to employment and eager to find the right position. Okay, so that just puts it on the table. You know, I had personal and family matters that were urgent. You can explain that live and in person at an interview, and you put the pandemic listing there just like it was, as if it were a job. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Should you disclose illnesses or blood disorders? Generally, the advice is an employer, people like myself would say, don't disclose. You don't need to disclose. If your condition forced you out of employment for a while, you can actually say that, but you don't have to say anything about gaps in resumes. So you can just leave the gap and not explain it in paper. And even if you do report a health matter, it's not necessary to name the condition at all. And you can say your condition, if you can say that your condition is controlled by treatment, then do say that. So general advice is don't disclose. This is, by the way, one of the things that career coaches will tell you is something that needs to be made on a case-by-case basis. This is an example from an actual resume. Somebody had 2 years that they dealt with a chronic, it was not a blood disorder, it was a different one, but nevertheless, I think it's good for this audience. Due to a rare disease, a genetic condition that began to flare up, experienced a multi-year journey through the medical delivery system. Finally found an effective treatment and achieved remission. This condition in no way precludes me from working full-time, and I'm looking forward to it, details upon request. Sometimes that's an okay thing to put on your resume, on your documents, just to kind of get them to calm down about a gap. But one more time, you can just leave the gap and not explain it today. So you need to make that resume match your job targets. So how do you do that? You need to dig deep for relevant experience, education, and training. I think too many times job seekers go out and they look for a job exactly like the job that they had last. I would encourage you, that's okay, but I would encourage you to actually go looking for a job that you want more than the last one that you had. I mean, just, you should be excited about it. So if the last one you had is working, do it again, but otherwise, ask yourself a very simple question: what do I want to be doing? And then try to figure out what experience, education, and training you have that would support that goal. So experience does not equal employment. You can get resume items from self-study, shadowing, special projects, those myriad day classes that are offered in any major city. They're all over New York. Self-study can lead you anywhere you want to go. And shadowing is not just for young people. So let's take a look at this example. This is actually from a Tulane football player. He went to New York to see his cousin. His cousin was working in commercial real estate. So look at this listing: Zenith Commercial Real Estate, New York, summer 2021. This person is, this is fantastic, by the way. Turned top New York City commercial real estate brokerage, learned of economic development services available, provided feedback on a marketing campaign and advertising piece focusing on high net worth, HNW, ultra high net worth, UHNW, and family offices of investors from Singapore, China, and South Korea. Attended a pitch meeting for a sell side broker. Attended negotiation session for $50 million Manhattan property. Okay, all that was 1 day of hanging around with his cousin. So these are the things they did. It goes on his resume. It ended up getting him a job in commercial real estate in New York, and that's where he is today. That's one afternoon. You can create resume items out of one afternoon. Also, you can get micro internships now. Micro internships are short-term paid experiences where you do something for a company. Paid is the key thing here. These are not exploitative, unpaid internships. They're just somebody asks you to write copy, or somebody will ask you to make drawings, or somebody will ask you to analyze something on a short amount of time, and they pay you for these. So this creates projects that you can put on your resume. So one of them is this company, Parker Dewey. And down at the bottom, you see that other company, Inside Sherpa. There are others, but these are honorable and reputable, and so I don't toss them around casually. I'm saying I actually endorse both of these companies, Parker Dewey and Inside Sherpa. There's tons of other gigs platforms where you can get experiences to kind of break away from whatever it was you were doing last. Now, some of you watching this will be a little older. By that, I mean you have more than 10 years of experience. And for some reason, people tend to hang on to this. They're like, I got to tell them about this wonderful job I had 15 years ago. My friends, they don't care what you did 15 years ago. You may as well hang a sign that says old and in the way. Okay, take that stuff off your documents. So you go back 10 years and you stop. You don't explain prior to 10 years. You take the dates off of your education and suddenly you become timeless. If you have important experiences that are older than 10 years, go back to 10 years and then you can use what's called a summary statement. You literally will put at the bottom of your experience section, you'll say additional or you'll say prior. And then I'll give you an example. It's on this slide here. Rapid promotions from copywriter to video content director in support of sales and product lines, managed communications projects, wrote and produced training and promotional materials, met objectives of the executive team. All right, no dates, no company, but you're still getting some mileage from these experiences back there. All right, this is Jeremy. This is my favorite thing to obsess about. Is when if you're not getting this stuff off your documents, you're going to run into ageism. Ageism is real. No matter how much employers say they're digging deeper in the barrel, ageism is real. Anyone that's on the market that's older will tell you that. So, all right. So here we go. I want everybody that wants to go back to work to start with a job target. Okay, so try on being very specific. Being specific makes people think you're serious, and it allows them to have a way to get started helping you. It does not lock you in. Sometimes people say, I don't want to be specific. I'm interested in a lot of things. I could do different stuff, but nobody wants to help this job seeker. What do you want to do? I don't know, anything, I guess. I've got a good education. I guess I could do anything. I'm interested in a lot of stuff, I suppose. Yeah, man. Nobody wants to help that person. They're not serious. So what would it look like to be serious? Well, be specific. I want to work with people. I'm very mindful of the fact that morticians work with people. So that's not enough definition there. So here's some examples of targets. A position in finance with a media company in Brooklyn or Manhattan. Partner track CPA assignment with a tax firm, perhaps with a focus on high net worth, taxation, complex personal taxation, small and medium-sized enterprises, state taxation issues, federal and multi-state. That's really clear. Content developer for a media company or a web design firm. So that's the kind of target I'm interested in people coming up with. So I hope that you'll dig deep to come up with those. And we'll be able to then actualize from there. Okay. So after you have a target, you have to develop your story that supports that target. Your story ties your past to this goal. So it ties your background, training, experiences, interests you've pursued to the goal that you have. And people like a good story. If your story is good, they'll buy you. If they don't like the story, you're going to be in trouble. So it's a business story. So by that, I mean, leave out distracting and irrelevant information. No matter how important it's been in your life, it's not the point of the story that you use in a job search. So all they care about is, what are your skills? Where'd you get them? How have you demonstrated them? And what can you do for me? That's what goes into your story. So health problems, hobbies, interests, your marital status. I interviewed a guy for a job once, and he told me how much he loved his wife. I was like, at the end of it, I was like, I've never even met your wife. Nothing could be less relevant to what I need than your description of your marriage. So leave all that out unless it will impact your ability to do the job or shows depth of interest in the field in question. So you need to take your story into an elevator speech. Elevator speeches, the term actually comes from, if you got onto an elevator with the CEO and you had about 10 stories to make your pitch, what would you say? So I've had clients literally make elevator speeches. I had a client who got into an elevator, looked at the person's badge next. She had a visitor badge. She looks at his badge. It's a senior officer. She pitched him on an elevator with her elevator speech and got off the elevator with an appointment. So I love that particular story. But these days, elevator speeches are broadcast emails. They end up being broadcast emails. So you need to have a good solid one you can use over and over again. So let's take a look at them. Here's some. So the elevator speech. So your story, this shows a pretty significant focus. I have experience in global procurement with emphasis on Asia. I speak a little Vietnamese and Chinese, enough to make a real connection with suppliers. I've sourced for global hotel chains, but I've also some background in sourcing for state governments. I understand how to vet suppliers, how to calculate that complex mix of value, price, and availability. This is the world of procurement officers to meet the needs of my stakeholders. My last job was remote, and I'm comfortable working on Asian time zones, particularly if the job is remote. So they're up all night. That's an example of an elevator speech. Now, sometimes you need the elevator speech to make sense of your background. You've had a couple of disparate jobs. They look like you're going in one direction for a while, then you went in a different direction. So your elevator speech should make sense of that. This is an actual elevator speech from a workshop. I started out as a teacher's aide in the public schools before going on to work as a paralegal and now as a social worker. These jobs may look random, but they're not. In each case, I was looking for a way to help children. I liked the schools, but then I thought I would go to law school and become a legal advocate for children. So I pursued the paralegal assignment. I found that legal work is very slow in addressing any kind of problem. A simple case can drag on for years. Then I discovered social work, where I can make a direct difference in the lives of young people. Social work is perfect for me. It's serving those in need at their moment of need. That's an elevator speech. It will become part of your broadcast introduction to people that don't know you. So now you have a target, you got a story, and you got a resume. So let's take a look at what happens next, okay? You're ready to go out and see the world. So the question becomes, front door or side door? And this is important. So you're ready. Resume's done. You've got a story that you're ready to road test. You've got a target in mind. Front door or side door? The front door is the job market that most people spend all their time and energy on. So that's Indeed, Monster, LinkedIn, and corporate HR sites. It's announced openings, published openings, usually involving internet interaction. The problem with the front door is it's too competitive. The front door competition is usually literally thousands to one. Now let's take a look at the side door. The side door is the hidden job market. That's the sign in the window. It's a neighborhood exposure only. It's a friend of a friend tells you about an opportunity. You approach a company that's not even recruiting. That's hidden job market. And we're going to dig into this. But the point about the hidden job market is the competition is usually 0 to about 10. So it's a lot less. The competition is a lot less, and you don't have to be perfect. In the overt job market, the front door, you need to be perfect. You're a high net worth taxation CPA licensed in the state of New York, looking for another job exactly like the last one you had. That's the overt job market. Works great. But if you're not looking for something exactly like you recently did, or there's something wrong about you, have a gap, your education's in something totally unrelated, then you need to realize that the overt job market is always going to favor somebody that is an overwhelmingly obvious hire. So that brings up applicant tracking systems. When you apply to a major corporation, you drop into an applicant tracking system. It's not the end of the world, but these tracking systems are designed to advance obvious candidates and designed to exclude anyone who's a little bit unusual at all. So they're actually designed to exclude the overwhelming majority of applicants. Applicant tracking systems are part of the reason that employers are whining so much right now that they can't find decent employees, is because they're relying too much on the AI that they think is helping them filter these applicants down from 10,000 to a handful. But you need to realize that if you fall into an applicant tracking system, that's not really going to help you. Just to prove this, I actually made a resume for a dog. The name on the resume was Rex, middle initial K, last name 9, Rex K9. So I made this resume for a dog, and I said objective kibbles, and I said skills able to bite intruders on the buttocks if they fail to show company identification. It was a joke. I mean, and so I sent it to the top 50 corporate hiring sites, according to a company that ranks them called Weddles. And I received about 25 emails back acknowledging my application. These databases couldn't tell me from a dog. And so when you apply to a database, they cannot tell you from a dog. They can't filter you in because they're so blunt an instrument. So don't get excited about applying to databases. Okay, databases swallow you up. Now let's take a look at the hidden job market. The hidden job market is somewhere between 55 and 85% of hiring, depending on which research project you look at. So it's the biggest part of hiring. But the nice thing about the hidden job market is it's the sweetest part of hiring. When you're in the hidden job market, as I mentioned, the competition is like 0 to 10. When you're in the posted market, competition, according to a recent study, was 383 to 1. That's a lot of competition once it's posted. I have other research that shows it's over 500, and another piece of research that shows by using databases, companies are actually filtering 10,000 people to arrive at a handful, like 1, 2, 3, or 4 people they're going to talk to. That's too much competition. So how does the hidden job market work? Basically, it works this way. You get jobs by talking to people. If you're talking to people, you're doing good job search. If you're talking to a database, it doesn't know if you're a dog, okay? So you get jobs by talking to people. You're not trying to get somebody to hire you who doesn't want to hire you. That's a misconception. You're trying to get somebody that doesn't need to hire you to tell you about somebody that does need to hire you. So each contact that you make is about getting information, not necessarily a job offer out of each one. You need about 100 leads to do this effectively. We'll talk about what a lead is in just a moment. And so you want to do your search where you're looking for a certain type of job, not looking for posted openings. So once you decide on a type of job, don't worry about whether an organization is hiring for that. Just go out and make them consider you for that. The best jobs are never posted. They go to insiders, and you can be that insider. Posted jobs draw massive competition. I've said that at least 5 times in 5 ways. And so also on the hidden job market, I want to bring this up. Sometimes through all your efforts on the hidden job market, you end up learning about a job that's posted. But by using inside job market techniques, you're the insider for that applicant. You're not somebody that came through the database. So it makes you a better candidate, even when that's the end result of this. So what's a lead? If I said you need 100 of them, what are they? A lead is a person, okay? But to get to a person, sometimes you have to wander through this bigger box. So a lead could be an idea, a list, a database. It could be all the alumni of every high school, college you ever went to. It could even be a posted opening. It can be these databases that we talked about, your friend of a friend. And a lead can even be based on an area where all the people in that area have the same kind of work, like Wall Street or Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley. So that's what a lead is. But your job is to turn these ideas into actual people. And so if you get an idea, any idea, don't forget that real people, humans, meat puppets, as they're called, can actually give you the names of other people. And if this is a really good structure to ask, who do you know who would know anything about? This cuts down on, I don't know anyone. So don't say, do you know anybody at Google? Don't say, do you know anybody at Goldman Sachs? Say, who do you know who would know anything about jobs at companies like Goldman Sachs? Okay, that gives you a much wider range of connections. So informal networks are proven to be really fruitful if you have them. You don't have to have a network at all. You don't have to know anybody. But if you have friends, friends of friends, people that you have a social connection with that are bound to return your call or take your call, this can go a lot faster. And once you connect with them, you ask them that question, who do you know who would know anything about internships at the United Nations? Okay, so this is undervalued, I think, in job search today because people have fallen back on social networking. But social networking existed in real life long before it became platformed. Okay, so it's actually okay to search company websites and email anybody you can find, and say, how do I get employed there? Who knows anybody at the United Nations, etc. And that's a way to get started. So if you have 100 leads, you really are trying to get to 100 people because a finished lead is a person. It's always a person. So 100% of the people who can introduce you to people that are in the right field. And you don't need to be weird. Sometimes people have this idea that they have to be like, have subterfuge or, some kind of an angle. You don't. Hello, I got your name for blank. I've always been interested in the United Nations. Would you be willing to have a quick connect with me about your company and your career? I'm not applying for a position with you, but just want your advice. This won't take but a moment. With these ground rules, are you willing to give me some advice? Okay, you can send this to anybody. You don't have to know them at all. But if you can say, I got your name from your former roommate in college, then you have a little bit more pull on them if you have a closer one. This is an example of another elevator speech, using it to go out and connect with people. I'm about to graduate from college with a major. It doesn't matter what your major is. I'm interested in sports. I was involved with several campus activities focusing on promoting and producing sporting events, both intercollegiate and intramural. I was a volunteer for alumni relations, focusing on promoting Tulane football. My ultimate goal would be to land in sports marketing and sponsorship sales, but I'm also interested in other areas. I got your name from the alumni office, and I wonder if you would have a moment to speak with me about the sports business. You'll notice that several of these examples don't say anything about getting a job with that person's firm. Why? Because you'll get more meetings if you don't do it that way. Okay, you'll actually get a lot more meetings. So here's another one. Hey, I love your company. I had a student who actually wrote a love letter to Levi's Jeans, and he posted it on YouTube. He spoke it on YouTube. It was a weird thing to do, I thought, but he ended up getting hired by Levi's. He applied, called attention to his testimonial on YouTube, and they were like, "You're weird, but we like you." So here's an example. Hey, love your company. I'd like to know if you have or anticipate opportunities in European sales. I speak French and German. I have a strong sales background, and I would like to talk to you about your European sales activities. Okay, so it's also okay to say to people, I'd love to work for your organization if you're pretty sure you can connect with them, but otherwise my advice is to ask for information, advice, ideas, leads, and referrals, because if they need you, they'll bring it up. So it's a little, you'll have a higher connect rate if you don't actually ask to work for them. Here's that magic sentence. I'm not applying for a job with your company. I'm just interested in your advice. Any advice, ideas, leads, and referrals and suggestions would be greatly appreciated. Now, if you are applying for a job with that org, then go straight at it. That's fine. Now, using this method, you have to get used to a very high failure rate. But applying to databases has a very high failure rate. The failure rate applying to databases is about 98.5%. And the failure rate from using this technique in the hidden job market is about a 95% failure rate. What do I mean by that? I mean that you're going to reach out to 20 people and one of them is going to make a connection with you. Get used to that idea, because people are busy. Everyone gets hundreds of emails. They don't know you. It can take some time to connect. I'll talk in a moment about what is too aggressive. But the first thing I want you to get is you're not going to have a 10% success rate. You're going to have a 95% failure rate. And that's got it. There it is. You've got to look long and hard. Jeremy, I love this picture. I just think this guy is out of his mind. But
he looks wide awake to me.
Yeah, he's going to be out there looking for a job. I can tell you that. He's not going to miss one. It's not going to slip by him. All right, so I want to bring up the difference between a social etiquette and business etiquette, because sometimes people don't realize there's a huge difference. In social etiquette, you're not supposed to ask somebody to connect over and over and over again, because that's called stalking and it's bad. But in business etiquette, you're actually allowed to reach out to somebody once per day, day after day after day after day after day, as long as you're nice and you're polite and you only do it once a day. Okay, now you stop if they email you, hey, I don't know you, stop bothering me. You stop if they get on the phone and say, hey, cut this out. But as long as you're nice and you're polite, it is absolutely within the bounds of business etiquette to send a missive to somebody every day. So I'm going to back down from that to this 6 steps to connect. So let's walk through this. So you identify someone of interest, and then you cyber research them, see what you can find out about them. Then you email them, hey, and then that's usually your elevator speech. You wait about 3 days, because everybody gets lots of email. you email them again. Now it's up to you how you want to do that. I like to recreate the email. I don't like it when people say second attempt, see below. That's a little snarky. Just do it again. Just say, might say at the top, I know you're busy. I'm going to try to connect with you again. That's better. It's nicer. And so then you wait about 3 days. The third time you email them, you will literally say, I'm not sure I have an accurate email address for you. Okay. So you're showing that you're an actual person and not a bot. And this actually works great. Now you can make it 2 days instead of 3. Don't make it every day. I think that's a little pushy. Okay. But let's say they ignore 3 emails, then you print this up as a business letter. I have a warning for everybody that's under about 35. Please look up how to format a business letter. It's not a printed out email. It's a completely different thing. It's a different animal. So make it into a business letter and then mail it to them. Mail is a very underappreciated communications medium. When people get something in the mail, it hangs around for like days. When I get an email, if I don't respond in the same couple of hours, it's buried under 50, 60 emails. But a piece of mail that comes in has a real lifetime, real half-life. And if they don't respond to the business letter, then you very politely call them a couple of days later and say, I've been trying to connect with you. I've emailed you 3 times. I sent you a letter in the mail, which you would have received on Monday. I'd really love to connect. My number is, and again, this is Donald Asher calling. Thank you so much. You will notice that message doesn't say, please call me back. Okay, why? Because if they're not going to call you back, then they're going to feel guilty about it. What you're saying here is, I would love to connect. Give me a call if you have the time. It's a better message than, hey, call me back or feel really guilty all the rest of this week. So this 6 steps to connect should be your guide to how many times you'll try to reach somebody. And be judicious. If you have a friend that's working in advertising and you want to bust into advertising and you can't figure out why they're not calling you back, I would lean on them heavily. But if you're contacting, I don't know, the trustee of a university that you don't know, I might just do about half of this and call it a day. So be judicious in who you pursue aggressively and who you let slip through your fingers after 3 attempts. But fewer than 3 attempts, don't get out of bed, my friends. Don't get out of bed, because if you're not willing to do it 3 times, you should just stay in bed, because that's where you're going to live. So talking to people leads to success. Talking to people means, obviously in person. It means Zoom and Skype. It also means a custom email exchange of questions and answers. All of those count as talking to people. The 4 steps to success, and the interesting thing about this is we teach this to high school students and we teach this to CEOs, and it's exactly the same in both cases. You identify a job target of interest. You find someone doing that job target right now, and you talk to them. That will get you where you're going. That's it. This simple process will lead you to any goal that you want. Repeat until retired. 4 steps. Repeat until retired. All right. So let's take a look at this transition that we're in right now because of the pandemic. People are going back to the office. There's a lot of hybrid experimentation. I just saw an article yesterday that New York City employers want people back in the offices 3 days a week. So they're going to let go of Monday and Friday. That's hybrid. And then remote, 100% remote, where you just never go to the office. It turns out workers love to not go to the office. So workers want remote, employers want hybrid. Some CEOs want back to the office. I recently talked to somebody whose HR department lost 45 people in 1 day because the CEO wrote a memo that said, we're all going back to the office next week. See you on Monday at 8. And 45 people said, not me, not coming. Good luck. So there's a lot of flux on this right now. Suppose you want to work remotely for health reasons, or just because you think you're more productive that way, or it makes you happier. It doesn't really matter why. Hot tip, don't bring it up in a first interaction with an organization. It may say in the announcement, could be remote, so then you'll know that, but don't make a big deal about it yourself. until they want you. And then you can reveal that you need to work remotely or want to work remotely. You've got to show employers that you've been productive remotely. Okay, this could be from work, or it could be from school, or it could be from self-teaching yourself on something that you did remotely. You can also offer to do a special project to show them your skills and abilities. This is pretty common, a little tryout. And you could design your own remote onboarding. So how do you design your remote onboarding? This is a pretty good list of things to do. Build a human interest resume with pictures. Human interest means not just work stuff, hobbies, interests, travel, pets, maybe you weave rugs, I don't know. So build a human interest document with pictures and send it to everybody. Meet everybody in your work unit one by one, briefly, 10, 15 minutes, and say, hey, nice to meet you. Join special interest groups, which should be available to you through HR or through your work unit. Ask for buddies to be assigned to you, a senior officer for policy, a peer for cultural norms, and maybe someone in a completely different department so that you can get an idea of how the organization is as a whole. Shadow somebody at work, especially if you could go into the office, ask to hang around with somebody in the afternoon, see what their work is like. Make the most of the in-person days, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that employers seem to be gelling on. And in Zoom, leave your camera on. If you want people to know who you are, let them see you. Leave your camera on. If it makes you nervous to see yourself, hide your self-image so that you don't have to look at yourself during the whole meeting. Once you try this, you're going to love it. And it will change Zoom for you if you do it. Post in the chat, private message people. Don't complain about Zoom. It's not professional. So employers are tired of that. Now, what about going to a meeting as a new hire? Do more listening than speaking, but bring some ideas into that room. I think that you really gotta play both sides of this. You know, I have ideas, but I'm not pushy about them. Learn to collaborate. This is particularly important for younger people. Learn that your ideas may be dismissed by people, and you still have to, go through the rest of the meeting and thrive. Now, suppose you want promoted. I bring this up because it's important. Not everybody wants promoted, and that's a myth. A lot of people just want to have a job they like and enjoy it. So don't let people force you into seeking promotions if you don't want them. And maybe a promotion involves a work style that you don't like coming back to the office. I don't know. But if you do want promoted, you've got to ask your boss about it. Okay. So how long once you get used to your job, usually somewhere between 6 weeks and 6 months, go sit down with your boss and say, boss, I think I'm doing pretty well so far. But if I'm not, you tell me and I'll make some adjustments. And what your real goal is to get to this. But let me ask you this. What would I need to do, accomplish, or learn so that when there are opportunities for advancement, you will think of me right away? Your boss cannot read your mind. She does not know if you want promoted. So you have to sit down and using this technique, ask for promotion. This is in my book, Who Gets Promoted, Who Doesn't, and Why. So go get them. With this formula, you should be able to go out into the job market with confidence and make something happen. Jeremy, thanks so much for having me. And I know that you have some questions and stuff, so I turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Don. That was excellent. We actually have a few folks here that I wanted to bring up. Tried to pull some folks from the community that have experience either looking for jobs now or having jobs, coming into it. So I'd love to bring them up, introduce them. Maybe one by one, if you guys can just introduce yourself, and then if you have a question for Don, we'll go from there. Nikki.
Thank you, Jeremy. Hi, Dr. Donald. Thank you for your presentation. Very informative. My name is Nicole. I go by Nikki. I have von Willebrand disease, type 1 severe, and I live with a port inside of my chest. It's compromised my workforce greatly. Not so much where I would lose my job. I would just feel as if I was just more so of like a liability more than anything. So Due to the pandemic, I actually had the virus 3 times. I had it while I was pregnant
Oh,
during the pandemic,
wow.
um, while my daughter was 8 months, and most recently. So my lungs are pretty much, they're very compromised. So I was working while I got the virus the 3rd time a month ago now, and I was obviously bad. So I decided to not go back to work. I'm a nurse. Sorry, I should say that I'm a nurse. And not go back to work bedside or in person anymore. I started off in the emergency room, and then I was doing just OBGYN recently. So just, like bedside care. So now I'm remote. I work with physicians all over the world. And I'm pretty much just doing like patient care, patient cases, and things like that, not related to bleeding disorders. But I love there was a slide that you presented in regards to bringing up the gap. I don't necessarily have a gap, and I just kind of, in the healthcare world, you kind of switch specialties as much as you want. I've switched specialties within the pandemic within 6 months. So I always thought that would be a problem for my resume, because within 6 months I went from cardiology to OBGYN. And it was just because the opportunity presented itself more so. But even when I started the new job before I got COVID, I was concerned with the bleeding disorder, more so because it was just more hands-on, and I was doing like surgery procedures, and it was just a little bit more concerning for me. And I remember when I was having an episode and it was really intense, and the physician was, obviously they knew how bad this can get, and they were trying to help me, but it seemed to be bothersome to the staff. And that, before I even had the opportunity to work remote, I was like, I don't think I ever want to do this again. I don't think I want to work in person anymore, because unless I decide to fully get a hysterectomy right now, I'm always going to have this problem. And I didn't know how to go about it on my resume. It's easy in the healthcare world to say I've done this and that and that, but then I look at the time frame and I'm like, wow, I went from cardiology to OBGYN, 6 months. How do I explain that?
But you can
It wasn't the
leave
blood
that
disorder
blank.
though.
Yeah,
It could.
I think you can leave that blank and just put times year to year. Don't put months
Okay.
with things.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
great. I'm going to bring up Miguel. Miguel is younger, and maybe Miguel, do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share?
No, actually, honestly, first of all, I want to say, uh, well, first of all, may I ask if I'm able to be heard?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, Dr. Asher, I really loved your presentation. It was wonderful. I guess I got a lot of insight, and a person in this crowd also, from what I heard, they're also very inspired. One of the things that I like to say is that, so my name's Miguel. Currently, I've worked for public speaking, right? I've always public spoke for quite a while, but currently I'm working for Target, right? Actually, this is the Target office, which I was so wonderfully borrowing and keeping hostage. But one of the things that I guess I have a question about was, I see your accomplishments, right? You hold a PhD, you hold masters, and you hold, I believe, a bachelor's as well, right? And one of the things that I've always questioned as well in this presentation was, from me working to Target, is there a possibility of getting to that position, right? To that position of being able to speak about, this is the way to inspire in that level, right? And I guess one of the questions that I wrote down thinking about this sort of thing was, what was this always an ambition? Or was this always what you wanted to do? Like you wrote about how, yeah, you wrote
Miguel,
about how.
that's a really good question. I got into the career field because I profoundly failed to get a job after college. I got out of college. I was going to be a famous writer. I went and lived in my grandmother's attic for almost a year. I wrote nothing. I was miserable. I was depressed. Then I went to Seattle and tried to get a job, and I failed completely at it. So it's a long story, but I'll make it extremely short. The first job that I got was writing resumes for executives, and I got the job because I had written so many resumes that didn't work. Let that sink in. But no, this was not my goal. But see, you from where you're at, you can start now. There's so many different ways to to make a go. So you don't need a PhD. I ran into a guy that trains people that work in retail, and he was making major bank. He was famous. He went everywhere. And he wrote articles about it, and he basically taught people how to interact with the customer. And so start from where you're at. Whatever you think you could provide insight into, you are ready to go do that.
I love that advice. I'm going to bring Jeff up. Thanks, Miguel, for your question. Jeff, want to introduce yourself, and if you have any comment or question about, that'd be great.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Louisat. I work with Jeremy. I have severe hemophilia, and that's been one of the things through my career, which is not something I'll typically bring up right away. But obviously, when you're walking around the office and you have situations with bleeding, or in my case, arthritis, there are certain days where I certainly, people notice, hey, what's going on? And then you kind of get into that story. So one of the interesting things now, over the past few months, I had been running a company for a private equity firm. We had sold the company back in May. And unfortunately, once the new owners kind of came into the fray, it was pretty clear quickly that things weren't going to work out long run for me. So decided to take a little bit of time off at the end of the year, realizing after, going through a sale and the last 2 years, definitely a little burnt out. And I guess my question is, one of the challenges I've been noticing is most of my jobs have come word of mouth, right? Somebody recommends you, and I'm finding it's definitely a different world. The part where you were talking about, the applicant tracking system. I've had a lot of folks say, Jeff, you got to go LinkedIn, make sure your profile is up to date. But I've worked on those sites, all the job sites, from both a hiring perspective and now as I'm trying to find a new opportunity. So I guess one of the challenges is with respect to trying to find the right person, a lot of those sites, particularly like a LinkedIn, won't tell you the hiring manager. So do you recommend just, as you said, try to find somebody at the company and, send them a LinkedIn message or just try to get to anybody that could point you in the right direction?
Yeah, I do. LinkedIn is it's a very interesting tool. It has some severe limitations. The main one being that it doesn't deal well with people who are generalists, and it doesn't deal well with people who have multiple aspects of their personality. So that's a lot of people. So I recommend that people get multiple LinkedIn identities going if they have multiple identities. So that's one thing. The other thing is to make your LinkedIn profile very generic so that it doesn't detract from the different things you might be interested in. But that's not going to help you find a position if you do that. You have to keep pushing your resume out and saying, hey, my LinkedIn's pretty generic. Here's my resume for, international sales. So that's one thing. But the other thing you're talking about is how the ATS stands between you and a human. You can use LinkedIn to find people who work at an organization. And then you can find lots of them, and you can use InMail to send them messages inside LinkedIn. Although I will warn you that a lot of people ignore LinkedIn. I mean, they haven't looked at their messages in 6 months. But anyway, you can do that, and then you write to them and say, "Hey, I like this method. It's a little bit of a bluff, but after all, this is New York City." You write to them and you say, "I heard you were looking for a senior operations professional with experience in X. Who is it I should talk to about that?" And you can write to anybody and say that. "I heard you were looking for an X. Who would I talk to about that?" And your hope, of course, is that they won't say just apply online, that they'll actually say, Jane Smith is handling that, or Jane Smith would be at the top of that kind of a row of people. And then, so that's how I use LinkedIn. working with candidates. I just use it as a way to find people at a company. It doesn't matter whether you know them. It's bonus if you both went to NYU, bonus, but you don't have to. And you simply say, I'm interested in this area in your company. Who would I talk to about that? Who would I connect with? And once you get a name, I usually jump out of LinkedIn and try to find an email for them. Just by Googling, you can almost find anybody's email today if they've had it very long. You can find somewhere where they're listed, where you can get their email. And then you use 6 steps to connect, and you just kind of run them down. So is that helpful?
No, it's definitely helpful, because I felt like I was kind of running into the wall on the LinkedIn front, and had looked at some of the other sites, but at the levels of position that I'm trying to get back into, it's been kind of the consensus that LinkedIn is probably going to be the number one online tool. If you're not making connections directly with folks, as you mentioned. So yeah, it's been a new process where I feel like the communication has definitely changed over the last 10 years or so, and there's just not as much speaking or talking to folks face to face.
I agree, but see, there's LinkedIn passive and LinkedIn active. Passive is you post your materials and you say, I'm a CFO. I work for people that do international trade in fashion. So that works okay. But active is when you dig around and you look for people and you try to get a connection with them. You both went to Stanford. I don't know. You both live in the same neighborhood. Doesn't matter. And you try to get them to talk to you. And if you take out that, I'm looking for a job with your organization, you might get more people to talk to you. And you have to kind of really bug people more than you used to. Because everybody's busy and everybody has these screens. I get 500 emails a day, and sometimes somebody will email me and I'm like, wow, what a cool person. I look forward to talking to them. But tomorrow they're under 300 emails. And so you have to really kind of keep after people, even people that when you're doing this. And there's a couple of, I don't know if this will work for you, but approaching somebody and saying, I'm looking for project work. I'm looking for people doing interesting things in this area. Do you know anybody? By asking them if they know somebody, you get to talk to them. They're like, oh, we don't need that. But let me just say, I know this company's growing. I know that company over there just opened in Brazil. So by saying, do you know anybody that might need project work? It's kind of it's a trick, to be honest. But also it does produce project work. And if people don't know you, sometimes it's a way of introducing yourself to them. So that's an idea. I'm not saying it's the right one for you, but it is one way to get past that. Nobody wants to talk to you because they don't know you.
Right.
That's great. I'm going to bring Christian up for a second. Christian's our last participant for a quick question. And then I would, so go ahead, Christian, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, Dr. Asher. It's a great presentation. I look forward to digging into some of your books. Christian Harris, I have severe hemophilia B. I'm currently a senior technical designer and 3D lead at Nike. And my background is in fashion design. I love garment making. And I've gotten to a point in my career where things have gone well, but I'm continuing to have to kind of thread this needle between finding jobs that have the salary going up, but also utilize my skills, and I like being hands-on and doing. So it's gone well so far, but that's continuing to be a challenge. Like, do you have any pointers or direction for creatives who are going more progressively into an executive kind of direction, and how to do that successfully?
Okay. That's a really interesting question. It's not an area, Christian, that I have a depth of experience in. So if you're doing design work, the problem, of course, is there's this picture in a creative director's brain of somebody that's 28. And if you're not 28, you don't match that picture. So that's a problem if you're doing design work. Now, if you're going to be a creative director and move on into the management of creatives, then that's just an issue of a portfolio. And it sounds to me like you still like to get into the weeds and do some design. Is that correct?
I do like to get in the weeds, but it's sort of the niche I've dug out for myself now is kind of weird because I enjoy design, but I don't enjoy designing for corporate entities like the one that I work for now. I love my job, but what I do is more in support of the people who are trying to create. Like I love making sure they love the work that they're doing and removing roadblocks for them. Now, in my own time, I just moved. This would usually be a studio with my sewing machines and I'm sewing, and that keeps me happy, but I also enjoy my work. So now being in that weird sort of space of I like helping you create, but I don't necessarily want to do the creative work myself and trying to keep my career and salary going up. It's challenging. I've done okay so far and I'm going to keep pushing at it. But, it's just one of those things that my mind is always spinning on what's the next thing,
There's a concept called branding, Christian, where you put what you're good at into one line. And branding got overused and everybody got tired of the concept. But branding still is a really efficient way to introduce yourself to people. And you just gave me a possible brand for you. I like helping you create. And I love statements in the second person. Whenever you say you're just smarter than people that say I. So it's just a really effective. So I like helping you create, could be your brand line, your tagline. And then it's just a matter of finding people that have that role in their organizations. So you would use the same techniques that I'm talking about to get people to talk to you at all, to find out if they have that role. And of course, if they have the role, then you're the person that wants that assignment. As far as increased salary, I really don't know. I don't know enough about your field. I'd have to really dig into it and even do some salary research to figure out how to do that. Usually the way to increase salary is to have more head count, bigger budgets, and that's going to lead you right back into those big corporations that you've said are wearing you down. So, but I think your vision is clear. It's just you need to find a place where people will pay you to do it. If you got lucky and joined a startup that hit, you could grow with the org. So that might be your angle. Say, I've worked for the bigs, I've worked for the littles. One thing I can tell you is how to go from little to big.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Really appreciate you being here. And I know that there were others that probably have questions today too, but we are out of time. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming out. If you do have questions that you wanted to ask, you can put them in the comments below. You can email us. At the end of this video, we'll have a little link to our email address. We'll reach out to Dawn, or we'll look at maybe other future ways that we can expand on this. Obviously, it's kind of a personal thing, trying to find these right mixes, and the answers can be personal, but I think you gave us a lot of tips. So thank you, Dawn.
Jeremy, thanks for having me. I'm really delighted to work with your community and help if I can.
All right. Bye, guys.
Take care. Thanks.